Hello and welcome to the new and improved Chord and Scale Finder 2024. This nifty little product has been around since early 2021, but enough has changed in the last year or so that we feel it's time to revamp our introductory and instructional videos. And we'll start at the beginning. The first time you open up the app, you will be presented with two initialization options, the advanced and the basic. So we'll hit the advanced option. And you will see that the tuning page populates with a whole host of instruments and related tunings. Just to give you some idea of how this works, we'll just start clicking on the guitar, and it will scroll through all the guitar tunings. And then we'll go down to steel guitar, and it will start scrolling through steel guitar tunings. It's important to note that you can always reinitialize the app by going to the About page, hitting Restore, yes, and we'll restore with the basic version this time. And the basic version has a more digestible 4-instrument list of bass, guitar, steel guitar, and ukulele. And we will now start with the tuning page, what it is, what it does, and how to work with it. Okay, let's drill down a little bit on the tuning page. We'll start by explaining the layout, since all pages follow the same layout. Up on top, you have your navigation buttons. Over on the right, you have the buttons for that specific page. A tuning requires an instrument, a name, and a bunch of notes, and a number of frets. I find that 15 frets is my standard because 12 frets gives you the octave. So the octave plus a few notes of overlap, that's all you need. And as I stated before, if you want to scroll through the tunings for any instrument, just keep tapping the instrument. But let's add one that isn't there now. We'll start with standard. Open G is not here. Open G is the perennial favorite of Keith Richards. So we'll start by giving it a name. Open G. And then we'll remove the existing notes and add the ones we want, which would be D, G, and again D, G, and then B, and then D. And then we would save it. Let's clear the screen. And there it is, the Open G tuning. Incidentally, I find that this all works best on a tablet. I have it on my phone and I can use it on my phone, but being older and a bit of a fumble fingers, it's easier to get around on the tablet. So, that's how you would examine tunings and enter new ones. And now let's move on to the scales. All right, now let's examine the scale page. It follows the same conventions as the tuning page. The navigation buttons are up on top, and the buttons for working with the scales are over on the right. I neglected to mention on the tuning example that all pages have help messages. You can see the message by tapping the help button, and then tap the message to make it go away. Now, the advanced installation option has many more scales than the basic. The basic just has these 4. But this is sufficient for most people because the vast majority of users will just work with the major scale. The major scale, in case you're not aware, is the foundation for all Western music, and it contains all you need to know and is worthy of a lifetime's worth of study. Although we do recommend playing around with some of the more exotic scales once you get what you need to know out of the major scale because, hey, it's fun, and it's one of the reasons why we developed this app. So let's add a scale that's not there. We'll add the half tone, whole tone scale, sometimes called the half diminished. We'll call it half tone, whole tone. And a scale is just a collection of intervals. The W represents two frets, and the H represents 1 fret, whole steps and half steps, and you use dashes to separate the steps. And it has to add up to 12 because that's the octave. So let's go W dash H dash W dash H W dash H. Whoops, let's remove that one. Make that a half. Okay. Does that get us up to, no, we need one more half to get 12. Okay, and that's it. So let's add this. And there you go. That's how you add a scale. And now we'll move on to the dictionary page. Okay, now let's look at the dictionary page. This is where we start to get into the meat of the application and where you'll create items of specific interest to you in your musical journey. The conventions are the same as with the tuning and the scale page. Your navigation buttons are on top, and your buttons for working with the page are over on the right. Now, the app comes preloaded with several dictionary items. They're there to give you a sense of how the concept works. And you can delete any ones that you don't want. And as we explained before, you can always reinitialize the app, so they're never permanently lost. But let's create one. First, let's pick a root note, which every item requires. Whoops, I wanted C. So there we go. We need a scale. I'll tap the Scales button and select the major scale. And then we'll need a tuning. And I'll go with guitar, open E. And then the fourth field is an optional tag. It could be a student, a song, some concept you're working on. We'll call this open E example, return, and then we'll add it. And there you can see it. It's the second item. And just to give you a preview of coming attractions, let's go find it on the Fretboard page. And there it is. It's the second item. Whoops, I pressed the base example. There we go. Open E example. So that is how you work with dictionary items. And now we will begin the deep dive into the mysterious and magical fretboard. Okay, and now let's commence with our dive into the Fretboard page, the true heart of the application. Okay, when you go into the Fretboard page, all your dictionary items will be listed alphabetically in the lower left-hand corner. And we'll pick one. We'll pick the guitar, the key of C, and the major scale. Incidentally, this expand button in the upper right lets you expand the fretboard and shrink it. And that was placed there so that the app is easier to work with on a phone. Okay, now back to the example here. If you look at these up-down buttons in the lower left, the first set of up-down buttons will let you scroll through all the dictionary items. So I'll just start tapping the down button, and that will take me through all the dictionary items. Up, of course, takes me the other way. And I'll clear this and go back to that first example, guitar, key of C, major scale, and I'll select major chords in the third box, and then I'll select a note, and then the second set of up-down buttons will let me cycle through all the notes in those various chords. Okay. And should I happen to hit this Use Tones button down here, then I'll get the chord tones instead of the notes. Okay, now in the fourth green box, fourth from the left, you will see a bunch of snapshots. Now a snapshot is an instant in time on your fretboard that you can save. I'll tap one here. There's the C 5-note blues scale. Once again, I'll hit Use Tones so we can see the scale tones, and then we'll go back to Use Notes. We'll look at some of the other ones. I'll hit the C major pentatonic scale. And we'll create a snapshot just so you see how this works. I'll clear the screen. I'll select the same example, guitar, key of C. I'll look at minor chords, and I'll go with a C, minor seventh. So those are all the notes in the C minor seventh chord for the first 15 frets of the guitar. And let's say I want to save that. I'll call it C minor seventh. And hit save. And there it is at the bottom of the list. Now, you'll see the screenshot button in the lower right. When you hit the screenshot button, it will take a screenshot of just the fretboard and put it in your photos folder. And this is a handy way to build up some learning material. This app exists for Android, Apple, and Microsoft Windows. And unfortunately, sometimes when you hit the screenshot button, it will take you out of the app. But that is due to the Xamarin framework that I'm using. I have no control over it. It's a little annoying, but just be aware of it. But nonetheless, building up screenshots of stuff you want to work with is a handy way to use the app. Okay, now moving along from left to right, let's look at these buttons here. The Add Resave button lets you add and resave snapshots. Clear clears the fretboard, gets you back to ground zero. And Delete lets you delete a snapshot. Matter of fact, let's delete this one here that we just added. Yeah, we'll delete that. Okay. Now, these plus minus buttons let you expand or shrink the fretboard. I'll hit +1, that works, and I'll hit 15 minus. So you can take snapshots of specific chunks of the fretboard or save these as a snapshot. And when you're working with chords or scales, you might not want, an entire 15 frets worth of chord tones or scale tones. So this lets you break it down into digestible chunks. Okay, let's take a look at this chords button here. And we'll get back to ground zero. Okay, now when you first click on a dictionary item, it says chords. And the chords are grouped into families. You see them in the third box: major, minor, diminished, augmented, and dominant chords. So we'll hit major chords, we'll hit a D, and there are all the chords that you can examine for a given note. There are shell chords further down on the list, just the first, the third, and the seventh. We'll hit clear again, and we'll go into scales. So these are all the scales you can look at. We'll hit C, and there's all the notes in the C major scale. There is the C 5-note pentatonic blues scale. Again, you can use these plus minus buttons to break this down into smaller scale pieces. For example, we're looking at the C 5-note blues scale now. Let's make that the classic blues box. Okay, there you go. Let's save that as a snapshot. Call it C blues. Okay, save it. Clear. Ain't that neat? Okay, let's press it again. Press it 2 times and you'll go into diatonic mode. Now, diatonic mode assumes a bit of knowledge of music theory, but it's worth the effort. Diatonic means relative to the key you're in. In this case, we're in the key of C. So if you look at the second green list box, you see the notes in the scale are numbered with Roman numerals. The C is the 1, the D is the 2, E is the 3, so on and so forth. And if you pick C, the root, you can get a C triad. That's a 3-note triad. Let's hit use tones. Chord is a 4-note chord that adds the 7th, half step below the root. A power chord is just the 1st and the 5th, and so on. And this is a nice way to sort of get your feet wet with music theory. All right, now let's dive into some advanced features here. See this little arrow in the upper left? If I hit the arrow button at the lower left of the screen, it will move. And then these up-down buttons change to raise, lower, omit, and undo. And what this lets you do is raise or lower strings in real time. So you can see, what effect playing with the tunings will have on the chord and scale shapes. And this was specifically developed for steel guitar because steel guitarists are always experimenting and playing with different tunings. So this is a way to, play around with them in real time. And if you find that special tuning that will take your music to the next level, you can write down the notes and enter it as a tuning on the tunings page. Okay. Also, the omit button lets you omit whatever string the arrow is pointing at. Again, if you want to drill down on a certain chunk of a scale, or only select notes of a chord, or select strings, this is how you would do it. And now I will just start randomly tapping notes. The undo button will, the notes will appear on the fretboard, and the undo button will remove the last one you tapped. So that's how that stuff works. Incidentally, much of this is explained by the help messages. So you can tap a help message, read it, tap the message to make it disappear. Okay, and there's also more extensive documentation on the 69th Street Band's website if you really want to do the deep dive. So now I'll show you some other advanced features here. Let's go with C, hit major chords, and we'll go with a major triad. Now let's see, you only want to look at the notes in the C major triad on the first 3 frets. What you would do is type the note, and then you would type opening bracket 1, comma 3, closing bracket, okay, save it. And that will save only the notes of the chord on the first 3 fret. This is how you would learn the various chord shapes for a given chord. So let's clear it, pick it, and find it. Yes, and there she is. Okay. All right, now let's dive into some really advanced topics. When I first rolled this app out in 2021, I spoke to a pedal steel player, and he said, hey, this would be really useful if you could use it to model copedants. And my response was, what's a copedant? Since then, I have found out that copedants are possible combinations of pedals and knee levers that you can attach to various strings on your pedal steel. And the ability to, model them might save you some unnecessary drilling and sawing on your expensive instrument. So I came up with a modest meta language that will let you do that and save these copedants as snapshots. Okay, and I'll explain the meta language and then show you some examples. Now, the first thing the snapshot needs, and if you've been listening so far, you know what a snapshot is, are the letters CP to identify it as a copedant. It doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. Then you would need opening and closing brackets for the copedant configuration. And then you can have an optional identifier for the pedals and knee levers. I use P1 for pedal 1, K1 for knee lever 1. Then you would have an opening and a closing parentheses for an individual string adjustment, and then the number of the string, followed by pluses or minuses to raise or lower the strings a half step. So in this example, you would use pedal 1 to raise the first string up 2 half steps or a whole step. You would use pedal 2 to raise the 4th string up a half step, pedal 3 to raise the 7th string up 2 half steps, knee lever 1 to lower the 2nd string by 2 half steps. It's 2 dashes, but unfortunately you can't see a break between them. And then knee lever 2 would lower the 8th string by a half step. So now let's look at some examples in the app. All right, now let's go to the app and see how this works in real time. I'm using 8-string C13th tuning as my example. And there you see the tuning. You see all the notes over on the left side. And now I have added the copedant I used in the earlier example as a snapshot. So I'll tap it, and bingo, there we go. You see that the first string, the A, or the G, has been moved up to an A. The 4th string, the E, has been moved up to an F. That's pedal 2. The 7th string, P3, has been moved up to a D. And then the knee levers, the 2nd string, has been moved down 2 half steps So it goes from an A sharp to a G sharp, and then the 8th string has been moved down 1/2 step from an E to a D sharp. So this is, and let's click the scale tones here so you can see how the scale tones change. And everything I've shown you so far with looking at chords, looking at modes, looking at different kinds of scales applies. You can look at it in the original tuning, and then you can enter some combination of pedals and knee levers to see what your copedant is going to give you, and hopefully save you any unpleasant drilling or sawing or modifying on your expensive pedal steel. All right, now let's demonstrate this concept in real time by creating a copedant. We're back with the same tuning, 8-string C13th, and I will enter one. So first we have the CP, and then we have an opening bracket, and I'll go with pedal 1, open paren. We'll raise the 3rd string up 2/2 steps, and we'll raise the 4th string. We'll call that knee lever 2 or lower. The 4th string with knee lever 2 by 2/2 steps. Closing paren, closing bracket. Okay, save it. Okay, and let us select that snapshot. And yes, bingo. The 3rd string goes up 2/2 steps to a D, and the 4th one goes down 2/2 steps. So that is how you would do it. Now this is some pretty complicated stuff, so I cannot be 100% certain that there are no bugs lurking in the code here. But if you find any, please let us know, and we'll get our team of elves on it ASAP. All right, now we'll get into another highly advanced topic. Somebody, not me, once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And after I come up with the copedants, I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could just display snapshots in sequence for a certain time period? And I thought about it a little bit, and voila, I came up with a way of sequencing snapshots in real time. And this is a further extension of the meta language that was developed for the copedants. And it follows a very simple formula. You preface the snapshot with the letters RT for real time, and then you have a bunch of opening and closing parentheses. And within each set of parentheses, you have the snapshot, the number of the snapshot, the 1st, the 2nd, or the 3rd, and then the number of seconds that you want to display it for. And you can use fractions of a second. So this little example here, we have real time, RT for real time, display the 1st snapshot for 2 seconds, the 3rd snapshot for 2 seconds, and the 5th snapshot for 3 seconds. And you may wonder, why bother creating this? And the reason is to show certain chord sequences or note sequences in the instructional videos that we plan on rolling out pretty soon, once we get done with all this stuff. Okay, now let's look at this dazzling concept in action. I have selected the dictionary item of guitar in the key of G using the major scale, standard tuning, chord example, and if we scroll through the snapshots, down there at the very bottom, you'll see RT, then 11/4, 3/4, 7/4. What this means in our little meta language is display the 11th snapshot for 4 seconds, the 3rd snapshot for 4 seconds, and the 7th snapshot for 4 seconds. And what this will give us is a little G-C-D chord progression. So let's tap it and see if it works. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ain't that cool? So now we could edit it if we want, create a new one, but we'll just cancel that. And now we'll create one so you can see how to do this yourself, should you be so inclined. Okay, so bear with me as I fumble around here. If you look at the snapshot list, you'll see that the first one is A minor 7th and the second is B minor. So the first will display all the notes in the A minor 7th chord and the second will display all the notes in the B minor chord. So let's create a snapshot, or real-time snapshot, to display each one of those for 2 seconds. So I'll go RT, 1, 2, close parentheses, 2, 2, close parentheses. Okay, save it. Okay, drum roll please. Let's hope this works, otherwise I got to remake this little video. 1, 2, 1, 2. It works. So that is how you too can create real-time moving snapshots if you want. Okay, last but not least, we have the About page, which is hopefully self-explanatory. Your navigation buttons are, as always, on the top. If you hit About the app, you will see a mission statement, as short and sweet as possible, explaining why this thing exists, and it's translated into all the languages we support so far, which, as of now, in January 2024, is English, Spanish, and French, with hopefully more to come soon. The User Guide button, for those of you who reside in countries that allow unfettered access to the internet, will take you to the 69th Street Band website, where you will find a more detailed explanation of all the stuff we've just been discussing in this little video here. And then the Restore button will restore the app in either its advanced or basic state. First, it'll ask you if you want to restore it, yes, no. And then if you answer yes, it'll give you the option of the advanced or the basic. So we'll just reinitialize this to the basic because that's what we've been using for the demo. So there you have it. If anybody has any more specific questions or suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out, and our staff of dedicated professionals will try to assist you as soon as possible. Thank you.